Joanna Spencer from the BBC will help us understand this global phenomenon. So let's move on the presentation. Understanding news avoidance. Why is this happening and what can we do about it? Joanna? It's like, is she there?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Stage is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's an absolute honor to be here today, and it's been super insightful and interesting hearing from the speakers so far, so thank you. My name is Joanna, and I join you today from the audience. Mic's gone a bit, so I'm over here. From the audiences division at the BBC, and our team, our broader kind of research team, is made up of researchers, planners, analysts, data scientists, all working together to gather insight that can help our rather talented content makers deliver brilliant content for our audiences. And the work that we're going to share with you today is something that we did back in 2024. It was a piece of research looking into the behaviours that we're seeing around news avoidance. And the research itself was based on a 5-day online community, some focus groups, and an online survey too. And you might spot as we go through, we've also kind of in this headline summary for you, we've nodded to other industry data too. So let me see if my clicker works okay. Right, yes. So, the reason that we did this research is to understand these changing behaviours that we're seeing around news consumption. Because as you can see on this graph here, it's been rising over recent years. So in 2017, we had 29% of people who said they found themselves actively trying to avoid the news at these days or some of the time. Versus 2024, we're seeing that figure going up to 39%. And here you might be interested to see where your country sits. But for us in the UK, that's at 46%. So I'll come on to this in a moment, but one thing just to kind of flag is that the research that we're sharing today is based on the UK market. So it's research that we've done in the UK, but there are a lot of similar themes within the Digital Routers report, which looks globally. So if this is of interest, it might be worth having a look at that, and hopefully some of this will be of use to you today. So if we've got this 39% of people who say they're kind of actively avoiding the news, it's really important for us to understand why that is. So in a survey where we asked audiences the main reasons they found themselves avoiding the news nowadays, the answer they told us was very clear, as you can see in this word cloud. They find it rather depressing. It's not necessarily surprising, given the context of the last few years and even slightly longer. We've moved from one crisis to the next, and we find that some people are turning away from too much examination of what's happening beyond their own bubble. And with advances in technology, people are more kind of overloaded in information than they have ever been before. We've got constant updates coming to them on their smartphones. Because of that, they are starting to feel more overwhelmed. And that, with kind of the relentlessness of the news agenda, people are feeling quite depressed. And all of this has shaped audiences' expectations of the news. So it's now seen to be immediate. It no longer needs to be sought out. There's this feeling for people that it's just going to kind of come at them in this explosion of journalism. And most now feel that the onus is on them individually to decide what the news is. And because of that, it can feel like hard work to process. And some are questioning, is it worth that? Is it worth that effort? What is the benefit? So alongside this, and we've talked a little bit about this today, there's also this rise in the number of people who say they are coming across fake news and misinformation. So we can see there, 42% in this survey said that, they feel they've encountered misinformation in the last 4 weeks, yet only 57% of them feel confident at kind of judging potentially false material. And that means that our role is, as ever important in helping audiences access news that they can really trust. And that this explosion of information means that kind of what we heard in our research is that people felt there was no longer a centralized agreement in what the news is. So they're deciding it for themselves using these 4 considerations. So is it true? Or is this true? Is this new? Is this important for me? And what's in it for me? So is it true? Feels like a bit of a hygiene factor, but as we know, with rising misinformation, the truth is getting harder and harder to gauge. And people are looking for other markers of truth beyond institutions. Is this new? I mean, this is, is this the latest thing? Is this the latest bit of news? Is this the thing that I need to know? And that's made even harder now with the volume of information and repetition, making it harder for people to figure out, is this the new, is this the latest thing that I need to be across? And is this important for me? And this is a lot about relevance, really. So what's important in the news agenda is not always clear or aligned with audiences' priorities. So formal news can feel removed from audiences' everyday reality, and online news can make everything feel important, and that can make it hard to navigate, especially with things like clickbait. And finally, what's in it for me? So whilst we know the cost of engaging with the news can be quite high, as we saw at the beginning, it can feel depressing and overwhelming. People are kind of trying to figure out, is it worth this? Is it worth overwhelm, stress, uncertainty, anxiety? What is the benefit? So the key thing that we kind of want you to take away from today, like the key insight from our research, is that no one really wants to be a news avoider, and total avoidance is really rare. It's actually really hard to avoid the news. It's near impossible. And what we found in our research is that avoidance represents a strategy of consumption, a way of coping, a way of approaching the news rather than an orientation. And in our research, we kind of found these kind of 4 different ways that audiences are responding to this responsibility of kind of navigating the news. So the first kind of approach is, total avoidance. And whilst that says total avoidance, as we say, it's really hard to avoid everything that's happening. And with this group who, had the most negative perception of the news, that they still did engage with it when the benefit was really clear. So in the really big moments, so in the UK, when the Queen dies, or in the pandemic, we see these people and they come to us. But in between, they might just be hearing about the headlines through friends and conversations and things like that. The next kind of way of responding is passive consumption. So these are people who are kind of receptive to the news, but they're not necessarily being proactive. So it might be that they are hearing a news bulletin in the radio in the car. It might be that they have news coming to them on social media. But because they're not kind of controlling or being proactive about their news consumption and how it comes to them, their experience can sometimes be quite poor. The next group, they kind of recognize the toll the news can have, so they do control the volume or the type. So it might be that they go to a certain provider. It might be that they choose a certain type of news, or they might even just go to the news at a certain time of day. They might say, I'm going to go in the morning. So these guys are kind of putting something in place to kind of improve their experience. And the final group, I think we all know pretty well, that's people that love the news, the active news consumers. They consume the most news of everyone. They enjoy consuming it, and that cost of consuming the news isn't as high as the other groups. So they're not feeling the weight of it or the toll like we see with the other groups. And I think the thing that we were thinking about coming out of this research is that our kind of mainstream news offer caters really well to those that are kind of in that back category here, in this active news consumption. And if we, as the BBC, want to, and all of us as public service broadcasters, if we want to deliver news that delivers or engages everyone, then we need to think about how we respond to these different strategies, these different approaches to engaging with the news. And in the work that we did, we kind of had a look at kind of 4 areas of opportunity, so 4 things that we're thinking about to help us do that, to help us kind of engage with a broader audience in the current context. So the first area of opportunity is to broaden the editorial agenda beyond update. And this is about thinking about the kind of the needs and the interests of those groups that are engaging with the news less. And it's thinking about kind of what's important to them. And we heard from SVT earlier about, I think, some really interesting themes on this. So, one way you might think about it is, sometimes the news is really good at telling us about the world, but we might not have as much that's helping people within their world. So it might be thinking about kind of broadening the topics and the things that we are covering. So, if it's my world, it might be about kind of health, lifestyle, culture, local news. We've had a new initiative called Your Voice, Your News, where audiences can send us in topics that they would like to be covered. But it could also be about positive news. And again, that's something we talked about before. So it's things that might be a bit more uplifting, might give a bit of a sense of hope, that might kind of give you a balance of the light in the shade of some of those heavier topics that we talked about earlier, giving people a sense of hope. So the first thing is to broaden that editorial agenda beyond update, give them more reasons to come to us, more topics that feel relevant. And the second thing that's kind of a bit linked to this is how we humanize our update offer. And this is about meeting more than the informational needs that we know audiences have. So it's about more than the facts. It's about how we deliver our content in a more person-led style. So it could be about, conversational, less formal delivery, or it could be about the way into stories. So it might be more about first-hand perspectives, hearing from the people behind the stories, things that people can connect with and relate to. So that's the second, to humanize our update offer. The third area of opportunity is for us to give audiences more control over their consumption. So, earlier we talked about kind of the volume of information that people are kind of dealing with here. And this is about helping people kind of stem the flow of information that's coming at them. And we can do that in different ways. One might be about formats. So, in the last election, we could see that our news fans, people that are actively engaging with the news, love our live pages, minute by minute, lots of data and insight, lots of information. Whereas our lighter news consumers, we saw that our summaries performed well with them. So the need to know the headlines that come through. And that could also be things about notifications as well. So how do we help people, if there are things they want to know about, how do we help them manage that in a way that works for them? And the fourth and final area of opportunity is to think about how we help audiences discover the best content for them. So we've got loads of journalism, we're creating loads of brilliant stuff, but as we talked about earlier, it can feel like this kind of explosion of choice, explosion of journalism. So how do we help audiences navigate that and kind of direct them to the bits that might be best for them. So, one of the things that we're thinking about in here is like how we kind of label and group content. So, earlier we talked about, is it new being one of the questions? It might be that something is labeled breaking, or it might be that something is labeled verify because someone's coming to the news and they just want the facts, or they want an in-depth read on a really big story. So that's something we're really thinking about, is how do we make the navigation of everything we do really easy for people to come to and to find what they're looking for. So to summarize, the key thing to kind of take away is no one really wants to be a news avoider, and total avoidance is very, very rare. Instead, avoidance represents a strategy of consumption rather than an orientation. And we at the BBC are thinking about these kind of 4 ways that we can better serve all audiences within our news offer by broadening the editorial agenda beyond update, humanising our update offer, giving audiences more control over their consumption, and helping them discover the best content for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions for Joanna. That was really, really interesting. While the questions come up, I was thinking, did you identify any age trend or even gender trend on news avoidance? So are women or men are avoiding more than others?
So when we did have a look at the breakdown of the different strategies, I think one thing to say is that people might move between. So there might be, a certain heaviness of the agenda. So it might be during, Russia, Ukraine, people might actually move from one box into another slightly. Okay. So people can be fluid. But we definitely saw, for example, we saw an over-index for women in the passive consumption. And we definitely saw some of our younger audiences more towards some of those kind of lighter strategies for sure.
Okay, that's so interesting. Okay. Okay. Stop doing that. Does verify suggest the rest of the news isn't verified?
Oh gosh, I hope not.
We hope not.
I guess the purpose of verify is to help tackle all the things we've talked about today. There's so much information now. There's so much misinformation out there. It's a service to help people, be a beacon of trust. If there is confusion around something or there are different narratives coming through, it's about kind of showing the rigor around a topic. If we've got a question around something, Verify helps answer that, and it provides transparency around how we've got to that answer to hopefully give people more confidence in the news.
What difference do you observe between news avoidance among younger audiences compared to adults? Do you have that breakdown of the data? Would you say?
Younger audiences and adults, I would kind of consider adults 16 plus, and we didn't do any research with under 16s. So that would be tricky to say exactly. So I wouldn't want to take a punt on that. But we definitely did see, some younger audiences, not completely. I think with your news fans, they're much likely to be older skewing. So you can definitely see that difference in the data.
More, do you see a connection between people avoiding the news and increasing divisions in society?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? And I'm sure, if we have people engaging in some of this in quite an emotional way, we talked about humanising the update offer. Maybe that's something that can help with divisions. It can help people see different perspectives and perhaps shows the important role that we can play in society.
And more breaking down the data, do you see any differences between urban citizens and audience in the countryside?
That's a really good question, and I can't
super
remember.
Specific.
I don't think we had cut by region. I don't think so. I wouldn't want to say on that.
Someone said, I hear 1830 regional news program is the most.
It's on the move.
Okay, it's gone. Here it is. The most watched program on BBC One. Is there any research about whether people trust the regional program more?
Gosh, I'm not sure off the top of my head if we have hard data on that, but my instinct would be there would be a closer, more kind of familiar relationship in our local content is so powerful and has such a strong connection with audiences. But I also do have colleagues in the room, if anyone wants to jump in on that. No. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
I think I've finished now, but did you get that?
It's a big yes.
Yes, it's a very good yes.
Okay, good. So that's also an interesting one. The news avoidance graph didn't include 2020, 2021. What happened during the pandemic? I mean, we were all...
Well, that wasn't our data, actually. So it might just be that they didn't run the survey that year. So that first graph was taken from the digital routers reports. So that's all available online, and there's split by countries as well. So probably worth a look if you're interested.
Okay, I think we all covered all the questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joanna.
Thank you.